What is up, YouTube? All right, y'all, I gotta crack the whip. They cracking the whip on me, I'm gonna crack the whip back on you. Check it out without a doubt, man. Before we get started, look, shout out to Kiwi Green. Shout out Kiwi Green. Hey, don't be Kiwi Green is always on the scene. She's always on the scene. She's commenting on both channels. Minda and Joanne. Joanne, did I see you on the other channel? No, I don't think I did. Oh, y'all go subscribe to the other channel, the Music Recording Network stream. It's a link in our description. Music Recording Network stream, man. Nikki, I ain't seen you on the other channel. Rob, and also Getting It Done Girl from the Bronx. Shout out to Getting It Done Girl from the Bronx. I don't think she know about the other channel, so she get a pass. Cookie always shout out to Cook, man. Cookie, you know what? You and Tahir and Jody, Ariel and Along, I ain't even got it. I ain't even gotta say nothing about y'all, man. Cook, y'all, that's y'all the team. Y'all the team. I'm just in here just driving. Y'all working. You know, the driver, he just drive the car. That's all he do is drive. The mechanic work on the engine and soup it up and make sure it's turbocharged and the gasoline is right and make sure everything is safe and insurance. That's the team. My pit team. Yeah. Can't be with it. I just drive the car. You know, so shout out to my team, man. Y'all are awesome, man. My team is awesome. Diddy prison meltdown caught everybody off guard. Sources say that he can't handle life behind bars. Well, he not doing life. Boy, just sit down for a couple more years. All that negativity and all that bad stuff you did, you thought you were going to never get caught. And if you do get caught, you thought they were going to put you in jail. So you did more bad stuff. I don't understand, man. Try to, make that make sense to me, baby. I got this big great granddad wallet. One of the kids said, "Oh, you see that wallet? When you see somebody with one of these type of wallets, that means they got money." I'm thinking I'm still young and I'm barely making it. I can barely afford stuff. Money. And it's funny because, well, I own a house and they don't even think it's my house. So I look like I ain't rich. Good. Keep it that way. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell. Let's check this bad boy. Yeah.
We'll soon learn how much. Mark your calendars. We'll soon learn how much time a federal judge will give Sean Diddy Combs after he was convicted this summer on 2 prostitution-related charges.
What?
His high-powered defense attorneys are urging for release as they got some famous names to write letters of support for the Bad Boy Records founder.
The walls are closing in on Sean Diddy Combs. The man who once walked through mansions lined with marble floors and million-dollar chandeliers now paces back and forth across cold concrete and steel. The roar of crowds has been replaced by the hum of fluorescent lights.
Diddy's lawyers wrote in a recent court filing their client has been punished enough. But will the judge agree next week when he officially sentences the mogul? Or will that even matter?
No, cuz, wait a minute. Time out.
Bush.
Hold up. You don't do a crime, right? And then you decide on how much punishment you get. Don't let your kids do that, man. Diddy ain't nothing but a little kid to me. And don't let his kids, which would be the grandkids. Look, man, I've been punished enough. No, you haven't. Stick it to him. That way he won't do it again. He trying to get out and be like, man, y'all done messed my life up for a year. All he gonna do is accidentally get back on them drugs. That's what's gonna happen. That's number one. Then number two, this what happens if you let him out too early. Is my point. Number two is this. He get back on them drugs, and then them drugs start messing with his mind and be like, I'm gonna get back. I'm gonna spend $1 million to get back on a lot of people. $100,000 per person. That's about 10, 20. You know what I'm saying? These people need money in this world, man. This world is getting, oh my God, this world is getting messed up.
fluorescent lights.
So
Diddy's lawyers wrote in a
his
recent court
lawyers-
filing their client has been punished enough. But will the judge agree next week when he officially sentences the mogul? Or will
That's what I'm saying, man. I'm going to let it play, y'all. But what I'm saying is, even the lawyers have been doing wrong so bad for so long, they don't understand that sentence, you don't say that to a judge. You don't say that to the person, I've been punished back in slavery. Master, you done whipped me long enough. Oh, yeah? Well, let me do it another hour. I don't understand how come these people, our justice system ain't got no balls or something. Excuse me, y'all. Here we go.
Been replaced by the
Here we
hum of
go.
fluorescent lights.
Diddy's lawyers wrote in a recent court filing their client has been punished enough. But will the judge agree next week when he officially sentences the mogul? Or will that even matter, as there still could be a possibility he could get a new trial? It's officially been more than a year since Sean Diddy Combs has been locked up in a federal detention center in Brooklyn, New York. Ahead of his trial, his lawyers pushed for pre-trial release, and that was denied after every request, even after he was only convicted on the Mann Act charges or transportation to engage in prostitution, as Diddy's lawyers chalk up those charges to an alternative or swingers lifestyle. But the judge still kept the mogul behind bars pending the outcome of his sentencing. In his ruling, Judge Arun Subramanian wrote, while Combs may contend at sentencing that this evidence should be discounted and that what happened was nothing more than a case of willing swingers utilizing the voluntary services of escorts for their mutual pleasure, the government takes the opposite view, that Cassie Ventura and Jane were beaten, coerced, threatened, lied to, and victimized by Combs as a part of their participation in these events. Diddy's federal trial had bombshell testimony seemingly
Basically, they telling the truth.
coerced, threatened, lied to, and victimized by Combs as a part of their participation in these events. Diddy's federal trial had bombshell testimony seemingly every single day of trial. However, he was still acquitted on 3 of his 5 federal charges. However, that didn't mean his Hollywood peers publicly welcomed him back with open arms. There are some, though, who are supporting him ahead of his sentencing, like his former girlfriend, Carisha Brownlee, better known as Young Miami. She wrote in part, quote, "My name is Carisha Brownlee. I'm a mother, daughter, sister, and a hip-hop artist who has spent many years in the public eye. I want to be clear that I cannot speak on or defend anything that may have happened before I met Sean Combs. I do not condone any wrongdoing. I can only speak from my personal experience and the man I've come to know over the past 4 years. One of my most meaningful memories was when he took me to my first Met Gala. It wasn't just about the event, it was about what it represented. Sean has always made it a priority to open doors for Black people to make it sure we are seen, heard, and valued in spaces where we've historically been excluded. That night reminded me that we belong in every room, at every table, and in every conversation. He's constantly encouraged me and so many others to dream bigger, walk in confidence, and never shrink who we are to make others comfortable. I've also witnessed him doing real inner work. He made the choice to check himself into anger management, start therapy, and commit to physical healing through therapy. That takes strength, humility, and self-awareness. He didn't do it for show. He did it because he wanted to grow and to become a better person. In my personal experience, Sean is not a danger or threat to the community. He is a man of God, someone who uplifts, supports, and inspires those around him to be better mentally, physically, and spiritually. But more than anything, he's a father, and his kids are the ones who look up to him the most. They need him. His presence, love, and guidance matter deeply in their lives. I truly believe that he belongs at home with his family, the people who mean the most to him, and who continue to be his greatest source of purpose and strength. Judge, that's a good man." Music producer Dallas Austin wrote in part, "As I have become to know Sean over the years, he has become like a brother to me. I have always seen him as a man of unwavering dedication to his loved ones, his family, especially his mom and children. He is a devoted father whose family always comes first, and the balance he maintains between his personal and professional life is both inspiring and admirable." Former Love and Hip Hop star and music producer Stephen Jordan, aka Stevie J, wrote in part, "Being in this entertainment business for 30 years and being friends with Sean, we've both endured personal challenges with anger and drugs, as I've been going to therapy and taking all the necessary precautions never to look back at addiction again. I'm proud of Sean. I've read in the press that he's clean and sober and also taking anger management therapy to become a better person, because we all fall short as long as we correct ourselves and never revert to our old ways. Now that's just scratching the surface. The defense submitted more than 65 letters of support in favor of Combs to the judge. There are also letters from each of his children, with the exception of his daughter, who's a toddler. However, his youngest daughter's mother, Dana Tran, wrote a letter of support. So did his mom, his sister, the mother of his daughter, Chan.
And the clang of prison doors. And now, according to multiple insiders and sources close to the facility, Diddy's breaking point may have already arrived. From the outside, people thought he'd hold it together. This was Diddy after all, the mogul, the empire builder, the man who turned his name into a brand of unstoppable power. But in prison, that image has shattered completely. Those who've seen him up close say he's not the same man anymore. They describe someone shaken, paranoid, exhausted, and utterly unable to handle life behind bars.
Nah, that ain't what the problem is. The problem is he know that it's a possibility that he ain't never, ever, ever getting out of jail. He keep hoping that he gonna make bail. This is what the problem is. He can't believe now. He believe it now. See, now that you got the time. See, when you thought I had a chance to get out, no bail, had a chance to get out. When you thought you had a chance to get out, that is when, now you know. When you thought you had a chance to get out, that's when you still hyper and everything, and you still thinking, yeah, I can get out and I can get these people back. I'm going to get back, whatever. But now that you know you can't touch nobody until at least 2 more years go by, make you think a little different. Every day gets slower and slower because I can't do nothing until 2 years come out. Damn. Got to be more careful. Now you about to start feeling it. You was found guilty by your peers. The judge sentenced you. No time served. What the hell? What the heck is wrong with y'all? Bush.
Those who've seen him up close say he's not the same man anymore. They describe someone shaken, paranoid, exhausted, and utterly unable to handle life behind bars. In his first few days, Diddy tried to carry himself with that same swagger. He still walked like a man in control, still talked like a man who believed he'd be out soon. But slowly, the weight of reality started to crush him. The noise, the stares, the routine, it all became too much. One inmate said, "You can tell he thought it'd be different for him. But in here, nobody cares who you were. Everyone's the same." And that truth hit him harder than anyone expected. Guards say Diddy barely eats. He pushes food around on his tray and spends hours just staring at the wall. He's been seen talking to himself, replaying moments from his old life, his concerts, his parties, his fame, as if trying to convince himself that he's still that man. But he's not. Not anymore. The power's gone.
The guilty verdicts on sex trafficking and RICO conspiracy were the only just verdicts supported by the evidence or rehash all the evidence showing why the government's force, fraud, or coercion arguments at trial were unfounded. Suffice it to say that the jury already weighed the strength of that evidence, and it is not relevant here and should play no role at sentencing. Now, his attorneys argue Diddy and his girlfriends, specifically Cassie and Jane Doe, were all adults when they participated in the Wild King nights or hotel nights or freak-offs. The defense says Combs had serious relationships with those women and were in consensual sexual experiences with adult third parties. And they argue he didn't profit in any way of these hotel nights or freak-offs like a Mann Act defendant typically would. Throughout his trial, drugs were brought up ad nauseum, and this recent court filing was no exception. Diddy's lawyers claim drugs and a high-profile celebrity lifestyle played a role in his conduct. They wrote, without minimizing Mr. Combs' conduct, this is in many ways a sex, drugs, and rock and roll story. Mr. Combs had severe substance abuse problems throughout the entirety of the offense conduct and participated in a high-octane celebrity lifestyle. So did Miss Ventura, independently and not because of Mr. Combs. As for Jane, she willingly took ecstasy and other drugs with Mr. Combs, which became a part of their relationship. Now, during trial, the defense seemingly implied what happened in 2016 at the Intercontinental Hotel was due to a bad batch of drugs. But in this new filing, Diddy's defense team says that the Intercontinental Hotel beating of Cassie was a rare time where Combs committed acts of violence during his relationship with Cassie. This despite Cassie herself testifying she couldn't recall how many beatings there were because there were so many. In this recent filing, though, the defense wrote, "The violence was not entirely one-sided. However, Ms. Ventura testified there were times when she initiated physical fights with Mr. Combs. On one occasion, for example, she punched Mr. Combs in the face. Mr. Combs, for his part, is the first to exclaim that these acts of domestic violence against Ms. Ventura are inexcusable. But the notion that the violence or coercion had a nexus to freak-offs is not true, as the jury clearly found." Now, part of the reason the judge kept him behind bars pending sentencing was because he admitted to being physically violent with Jane as recently as June of 2024, 3 months before his arrest. Jane testified she started that physical altercation and admitted to throwing things at him, calling him a pedophile and a monster after punching him in the head. The defense wrote, "By that point, Mr. Combs was intoxicated, as he had consumed multiple glasses of champagne and multiple shots of tequila. Again, Mr. Combs knows that partaking in any type of physical violence with a woman is inexcusable. But the jury rejected the argument that the violence caused Jane to participate in a hotel night." Throughout the court filing, the mogul's defense team argues his conviction isn't like other Mann Act cases where the GOJ, for example, limits the prosecutions to cases involving sex trafficking minors or defendants who engage in commercial prostitution enterprises as panderers or call girl operations. They wrote, quote, "In other words, only 1% of Mann Act cases we identified involved so-called buyers or Johns. That number alone speaks volumes and corroborates the conclusion that the DOJ does not seek to incarcerate Mann Act defendants who merely purchase prostitution services." During the trial, we learned through testimony what some of the male escorts or entertainers that were hired do during these freak-offs or hotel nights, and that was through the testimony of Daniel Phillips and Sheree Hayes, aka The Punisher. Diddy's defense argued this is the only case they've identified where prosecutors claim professional consenting adult males were Mann Act victims. Writing, "The government now claims that the male escorts were Mr. Combs' victims, but this is apparently the only case in Mann Act history where the government has argued that consenting professional adult male escorts or entertainers who made thousands of dollars were victims. The Mann Act did not originally treat men as victims, and Congress never anticipated such an application of the statute." They argue the time he served has been punishment enough, especially serving time at MDC Brooklyn.
The control's gone. All that's left is fear. Those inside say he doesn't sleep well either. He wakes up in cold sweats, jolting out of nightmares that seem to blur the line between memory and guilt. Some nights he shouts out names: Cassie, Kim Porter, Biggie. The guards hear him, the inmates hear him, and everyone's realizing the same thing: Diddy's not built for this life. One of the most chilling reports from insiders came after a morning cell inspection. Guards found him sitting on the edge of his bunk, head in his hands, shaking. When they called his name, he didn't answer. When they asked if he was okay, he whispered, "I can't do this. I can't stay here." Those words, "I can't stay here," have been echoing through the hall since. They say fame fades fast in prison, but for Diddy, it's not just fame that's fading, it's his identity. He spent decades building a kingdom, surrounding himself with yes men, making the world revolve around him. But now, nobody says yes, nobody follows orders. The guards tell him when to eat.
His team argued the mogul is routinely subjected to violence, both directed at him and at others. They point one example from less than 2 weeks ago, writing, "On September 12th, for example, defense counsel was in the middle of a legal video call with Mr. Combs, which was summarily ended at 2 p.m. because of a stabbing that locked the facility down for the next several days. They write living conditions at MDC remain inhumane, lockdowns remain common, and other conditions are similarly horrible. There are 10 different examples listed of what Diddy's life truly has been like behind bars, a far cry from his life of luxury, including constant suicide watch. This means that every 10 hours, Mr. Combs must present his identification card to the guards to show that he is alive and well. Limited access to clean water. Mr. Combs often heats his water to have clean water to drink without getting sick. Sleeping in a dorm-style room within 2 feet from other inmates with the bathroom in the same room with no door. Mr. Combs has not breathed fresh air in nearly 13 months or felt sunlight on his skin. Often walking with a limp due to a painful knee injury that requires surgery that he has not received in federal custody. Lack of access to healthy or edible food, which is essential to pre-diabetics. The food that Mr. Combs has survived on includes expired processed pork, chicken, and beef, which on any given day can contain maggots. Lack of physical exercise with weights or any proper equipment. No physical therapy for his several shoulder and knee injuries. No functioning washing machines/dryers. And extreme temperatures, freezing cold or burning hot. Now, after his trial and the dozens of lawsuits he faces, his lawyers argue that his legacy has been destroyed, stating, due to adverse publicity and the allegations which the jury rejected, he faces nearly 100 lawsuits, most of which have been filed by individuals he has never met before, all of which contain made-up claims by individuals seeking to profit from Mr. Combs' downfall. Unfortunately, these lawsuits have involved his family, with his 84-year-old mother being sued in several states by individuals and his sons also being sued alongside Mr. Combs. They go on to write, as bad as life is inside of MDC, Mr. Combs has suffered countless other losses. Since his incarceration and conviction on the Mann Act, these and other collateral consequences to his life have been personally devastating. He has been separated from his family, has mounting legal bills from the indictment and defending lawsuits that were the direct result of the United States Attorney Damian Williams' prejudicial press conference announcing this case, and has lived in MDC for over a year, despite having every intention on fighting this case from day one. His defense attorneys cite other instances where his life has been systematically dismantled. For example, after Cassie's lawsuit and the lawsuits after, his companies were unable to operate as they once were, and he had to let go of over 1,000 employees. Some employees, according to the document, were unable to get new employment because of their past association with the mogul. His federal case has also had devastating consequences for his children. They were canceled and lost business opportunities. The family's Hulu show was canceled after Cassie's lawsuit. He was removed from the boards of 3 charter schools he created. He was stripped of his honorary doctorate degree from Howard University. He was forced to return the key to the city of New York. And he had to step down from his TV network, Revolt, which, according to the filing, was one of 2 black TV networks in the United States. So in all, the defense is hoping the judge sentences him to a 14-month sentence, meaning if the judge sides with him, it's likely he could be out of jail before the holidays. As of this recording, though, prosecutors haven't submitted their recommendations for his sentencing, but they've previously said that he has an extreme history of violence, and that the attempts to minimize his conduct show he's still very dangerous. So that was a lot, right? A lot of legalese, a lot of pages to go through. So let's break it down further with none other than criminal defense attorney Safa Robinson Ferrer. Safa, always great to see you, and thanks so much for joining me. Let's take a little step back. It's almost sentence.
Eat, when to sleep, when to move. It's control stripped to the bone. And for a man who once ran everything, that's a kind of torture that no money can escape. According to one source familiar with the situation, Diddy has had several emotional breakdowns since arriving behind bars. He's cried openly during roll call, lashed out at guards, and begged to call his lawyers outside the scheduled times. One incident reportedly got so bad that officers had to escort him back to his cell early, after he started shouting that he didn't belong here. Another inmate said, "He ain't acting like no tough guy. He's scared, man. You can see it. Every time them doors close. It's like he's losing a piece of himself. And that fear? It's contagious." The other inmates sense it. They whisper about it. Some mock him, others pity him, but everyone watches him, because when a man like Diddy breaks, it's not quiet, it's loud, it's visible, it shakes the room. It's said that prisons...
Damn. I can imagine myself walking into Diddy's cell if he's feeling all this. I'm scared. People... I'm just scared and I want out. I would sit him down and say, imagine Cassie or any of these other girls, the one you had held hostage. This is their words. And had her made her take a lie detector test, right? Imagine how they felt. When is this going to end? What in the world is this man going to do? When is he going to stop beating or hitting on me and pounding on me? No matter what I do, I try to get close. I don't see how people, well, thank you, Jesus. I don't know why, or I don't know how. I don't see how people can hit me one time, dog, and that's it. And then you forgive them, hit you again, and you forgive them. That's crazy, man. One time, you might have accidentally messed up. The first time you hit me, I'm going to let you know that you better think twice before you do it again. Period. Oh my God, boy. Boiling hot water. I would have wait till he knocked out sleep. I'm going to the bathroom, honey. Turn the stove on. Oh, gotta go back to the bathroom. Swoosh.
Bush, yeah.
Others pity him.
I'm sorry,
but everyone
man.
watches him, because when a man like Diddy breaks, it's not quiet, it's loud, it's visible, It shakes the room. It's said that prison strips away your mask, and for Diddy, that mask is gone. The confidence that
That's
used
what it's
to fill
supposed to do.
Bearing all. It's probably going to be very emotional for them or very difficult to talk about on a public stage. Do you think that's something that the defense is really going to focus on?
I think so. We know, at least in the civil complaints, one of the defense strategies has been to out the victim. Some of them want to remain anonymous, right? And the defense in almost every case has filed a motion to unmask the identity of the accusers because they think on the defense side that maybe people will be more hesitant to come and talk about their sexual assault or sexual abuse at a very public trial. And it's hard for victims of abuse. So I do think the defense is banking on that. And we know that some of these acts happened years, sometimes even decades ago. So they're going to point out inconsistencies in any statements that they're making and argue that this shows that they're lying. And we've already seen it with a couple of the victims who have given statements already to the media. One was an interview with CNN. Another victim gave an interview with NBC. That victim, of course, being the Alabama woman who accused both Diddy and Jay-Z. And after those interviews, the reporters and the media outlets saw some inconsistencies, things that were incorrect in terms of maybe the dates or the locations of where things happened. And I think the defense is going to use that to say, well, these people aren't mistaken. They're outright lying. And the reason they're lying is they want fame, they want money. So we're going to see a very aggressive cross-examination in this case, Sierra.
The story that you brought up about Jane Doe, the woman who's accusing Diddy and Jay-Z from back in the year 2000 when she was 13 years old, that one's huge because a judge in that case just ruled she could remain Jane Doe. So for now, at least, we don't know her name. If that's the case for some of these people that the government is going to call, how will Diddy's team prepare for cross-examination if they're not sure exactly who they are or what the experience was?
So it's a little bit different in remaining anonymous in a civil case. Ultimately, if a case does go to trial, that victim will have to take the stand and testify in a public courtroom. Now, with respect to what the government is going to do in the criminal case, right? The government is not going to call more than 100 victims. That just doesn't make sense, right? The government is going to pick maybe their 5 to 10 best victims. Obviously, we know the best of all is going to be Cassie Ventura, just because there's a video and she was with Diddy for more than a decade. So she's their star witness. But after that, you want some other victims who are telling the same story of physical and sexual violence. So they're going to want victims that they think are telling consistent cases, victims that won't be beat up too much on cross-examination. Maybe that's a bad pun to use, but someone that can withhold the very aggressive attacks. I mean, we've seen just the filings in these cases, how aggressive both Combs and Jay-Z's lawyers have been when it comes to going after these victims. So you want to make sure that if you're a prosecutor, hey, this is someone that's going to hold up, because the entire case really comes down to this victim testimony. I mean, obviously, to the extent that there's video evidence, that's great. That's the best of all, because video doesn't lie. But we're talking about sex acts that happen behind closed doors. So we really need the individuals who participated in them to come and tell their story to the jury. So I think the prosecution, like I said, is going to have maybe 5 to 10 of their best witnesses. So they're going to have to disclose those witnesses to the defense and any prior statements that they've made. Obviously, there's one-way disclosure in criminal procedure. The defense doesn't have to do anything. Prosecution has to give over those names, give over those statements, so the defense will absolutely have the opportunity.
Entire arenas is replaced by silence. The smile that once sold records is gone. Even the walk, the trademark Diddy strut, is gone. He walks slow now, cautious, head low. The man who once demanded attention now avoids it. Inside sources claim that Diddy has requested solitary confinement multiple times, not for punishment, but for safety. He fears other inmates are targeting him. He's reportedly been taunted, threatened, and cornered by groups testing his nerves. They want to see if the tough talk is real, one guard said, but it's not. He folds quick. He's terrified. The isolation has only made things worse. Alone in his cell, Diddy's thoughts spiral. He writes letters he never sends, pacing and muttering to himself for hours. Some nights he sits by the door just listening to the sounds outside, the footsteps, the yelling, the metal clanging, as if reminding himself that this isn't a dream, that this is real. And the reality is brutal. Gone are the champagne nights. the private jets.
Opportunity to prepare for the cross-examination.
We've talked about what we expect from both sides. The fact that Diddy's team is going to say, yeah, we had these freak offs, but they were consensual. And then, as you just mentioned, the incredible testimony we can expect from the prosecution, these witnesses that were involved. So that's kind of what we can expect in May when it comes time for trial. But as of now, what are these federal prosecutors doing to prepare and make sure they have an airtight case?
They're really preparing those witnesses, and they're trying to establish one of three things. The difference between sex trafficking and consensual sex is force, fraud, or coercion. They are going through their victims and they're saying, how can I establish force? How can I establish coercion? Probably not so much fraud, right? Because ultimately, this case is about sex trafficking. You know, there's prostitution counts, and prostitution is different. Prostitution just means that the sex happened, but there was an exchange of something of value. But the feds aren't trying this case to convict Diddy of prostitution. They want to get to sex trafficking. So their entire focus right now is to prove that the sex involved that force or that coercion, right? Was it people being drugged against their will? Was there security? Were there weapons, right? That's why even though he wasn't charged with the weapons violation, they really talked about the rifles, the assault rifles in the indictment. So I think that's going to be the focus of the Department of Justice in this case. How can we improve that force? How can we improve that coercion?
It's going to be interesting to see what they bring forward because it does seem like they have a lot of evidence. I'm glad you brought up the weapons issue because you're right, it wasn't a charge, but it's still in the court documents. Talking about the defense side of things, we've kind of inferred what their plan is, at least what we can expect. But as of right now, this next 5-ish months, what do you think the defense team is doing to prepare for the trial?
I think the defense has to go one of two ways. Either this was just purely consensual. I think that's going to be tough because I expect that there will be sex workers involved. I think they're probably going to go and say, listen, this happened. There were payments made, but no one was forced to do this, right? Prostitution is common in every state in this country. And yeah, there were prostitutes there and they were paid. But no one was forced. No one was coerced to do this. They did this voluntarily. They did drugs, they partied, and they had sex. It's a tale as old as time. And I think that's what the defense is likely going to argue in this case.
I think a question on everyone's mind is what kind of story is Diddy going to tell? Because we haven't heard much from him since his arrest or even since the federal raids, which kind of gets me thinking, could P. Diddy take this stand? Is that something he would do? Obviously, it's up to him himself, the defendant in the case. But what do you think? Do you think that would be strong for the defense or not a great idea?
I don't think it's a good idea because, you know, the video, especially the 2016 video of him beating Cassie Ventura is so bad. He's going to get destroyed on cross-examination. If I'm defending this case, and I wouldn't defend this case, it's a very difficult case, but if I were, I would just focus on going after the victims and cross-examining them. I think that's the only chance that Combs has. Because once you take the stand, the entire case comes down to the defendant's testimony. It's a very risky proposition in a case like this where there's so much evidence against him.
As you pointed out, though, there are decades of accusations against P. Diddy, so he would probably have to go back into his brain, okay, this was the year 2000, here's what happened. I mean, I think you're right. I don't think we're going to see him on this stand. I am wondering, though, if we're going to see other celebrities on this stand. Jay-Z is a name that we've recently heard in that Jane Doe filing, the woman we were just speaking of. She now...
The empire of luxury. In their place, iron bars, cheap food, and 23-hour lockdowns. The people who used to answer his calls, they're silent now. His lawyers, struggling to keep up with the chaos. His family, keeping their distance, overwhelmed by the constant headlines. It's becoming clearer each day, Diddy's mind is unraveling faster than his empire. One staff member who's worked in the facility for years said, "I've seen a lot of men come in here thinking they're untouchable, but fame don't mean nothing once those gates close." Diddy's realizing that now, and it's breaking him. And maybe that's what hurts the most for him, the realization that he's no longer in control of the story. For years, Diddy controlled everything, the image, the narrative, the press, but behind bars, the story writes itself, and he can't spin this one. He can't buy silence here. Reports say his team has been fighting to get him mental health evaluations. They're worried about what might happen if he's left alone too long. But Diddy reportedly refuses therapy. He tells everyone he's fine, but even the guards don't believe it anymore.
And that the judge is not going to prejudge that. There's a lot more information he needs to get, not only the pre-sentence report, but we're going to make a very fulsome sentencing submission. And he's going to have, a much more detailed picture. Even, the trial was about the charges, right? And he doesn't have the full picture of all the factors about Sean's life that he's going to consider. There's going to be a big fight about the sentencing guidelines. We think actually we're going to end up arguing for an even lower guideline range than we had originally believed at the time of the verdict, where we didn't have we had like a couple of hours to try to figure out what to say about bail. So, I hope the judge will grant bail, but I feel confident that even if he doesn't, it doesn't necessarily mean he's not going to sentence Sean to time served. He's going to take everything into account when he gets all the submissions. And, I've got a lot of confidence that the judge is going to be fair and not prejudge the situation.
And you also have this motion for judgment of acquittal, that the Mann Act convictions should be tossed out, Combs be granted at a minimum a new trial. Number of very interesting arguments that are present, and it's basically that there has really never been, as we've talked about, a prosecution conviction on a Mann Act like this, that Combs wasn't profiting off of the business. There were all consenting adults that were involved. The jury didn't find that there was any sex trafficking, that this isn't even prostitution per se, it's more voyeurism, that the intent wasn't for people to travel for sex for money, but paid them for their time. They were all having a good time. There's a First Amendment argument that the freak-offs and the hotel nights were performances that were videotaped so he could watch them later. It's amateur pornography. There's an argument that he was prejudiced because of all the other evidence that came in to prove RICO or sex trafficking, but would never have come in if this was merely a prosecution for the Mann Act violations. Specifically, we talk about the Intercontinental Hotel footage. But couldn't the counter argument be, if you look at the text messages and voice notes and the travel, hotel, the payment documentation, that these charges, the Mann Act charges, could have been proven based on that evidence alone and not anything else about racketeering or sex trafficking?
Well, I think that goes, I don't agree with that. I think that, as we argued in the papers, the government didn't really show that the purpose of the travel was to have sex for money, and that in fact all the testimony and a lot of the other evidence showed that the men were being paid for their time. But even if we were wrong about that one, we have a number of the other arguments that you mentioned that really aren't undermined by those records. So for instance, one of our main arguments is that this statute, which used to be called the White Slave Traffic Act, it has this long history, but even with this long history, it's never been applied to a case like this. The term prostitution in a lot of states doesn't include this conduct, even if someone's being paid. If the person making the payment is paying essentially to observe other people having sex, that's not prostitution. So we've got the First Amendment argument, as you mentioned, and the new trial argument. So all of those arguments, I think, are independent of, the issue you raised, which, so we think we have a really strong motion. And so we're hoping the judge will agree. We'll see.
So just to be clear, I'll list out a couple of things that stood out to me when we were watching the trial. There was apparently this voice message that was played from Combs to Paul, right, one of the purported sex workers.
Said, you can see it in his eyes. He's scared of himself. He's scared of what he might do. Every move he makes now is watched. Every word he says gets noted. The smallest reactions, when he flinches, when he hesitates, when he looks lost, they all tell the same story. Diddy's not surviving prison. He's sinking in it. And outside, the world watches in disbelief. This was the man who built an empire from nothing. The man who once said can't stop, won't stop. But now, he's stopped. Completely. Insiders close to his family say his kids are struggling too. They can't believe what they're seeing. To them, he was larger than life. Untouchable. But now they're watching the same footage everyone else is, footage of a broken man trying to hold it together in a place that's designed to break people. Even his closest associates are staying quiet. Some say it's out of fear. Others say it's because they know the truth. This isn't temporary. This isn't a setback. This is the new Diddy. The man who once commanded rooms now sits in silence behind bars, battling demons no one can see. Inmates say there's something haunting about him now. He walks slow. never makes eye contact, always lost in thought. Sometimes they catch him humming quietly to himself, old songs, old hooks, lines from another life. It's like he's trying to hold on to something that's already gone. And every day it gets harder. He's realized now that prison doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care how many records you sold or how many millions you made. In here, everyone's just another number. And for Diddy, that realization has shattered everything he ever believed about himself. The man who once lived for the spotlight now hides from it. The man who once ruled an industry now follows orders. The man who once told the world he was unstoppable now whispers to himself that he can't make it another day. This isn't the Diddy the world remembers. This is the Diddy stripped of everything, the fame, the fortune, the ego, and what's left is a man unraveling, one sleepless night at a time. No more bravado, no more slogans, just silence, steel, and regret. Sources say he's begging his lawyers to get him out, even if just for a day, but deep down, everyone knows what's happening. The music mogul who once had it all is watching it all fall apart, and there's nothing he can do to stop it. The meltdown is real, the fear is real, and for the first time in his life, Diddy is realizing that no empire can protect you once the cell door closes.
Ah, lordy, lordy, lordy. What the hell, right? What the hell did he thought he was going to get if he get caught? You know what I'm saying? It's called jail. Whatever he going through, everybody else in that jail going through it. So why should we care? If it was bad conditions, we should be caring about all them poor people in that jail. Now Diddy's there. I thought he was making a change. Wasn't he making a change? I could have sworn they said that he got all the gangs and stuff loving each other and teaching the class. Man, well, y'all make up y'all mind. Y'all let me know what y'all think, man. Of course, jail is rough. That's why Uncle Mike don't want to go. So if you go to jail, don't expect me to come visit you. I got 3 of my friends. They said, man, you wasn't lying, man. It was like, man, what Mike gonna come up? Yeah, Mike think he too good for us. I heard plenty of people say that. And guess what? You're right. I do think I'm too good for you. No, I don't think it. No, this is what I told him. I don't think I'm too good for you. I know I am. I know I'm too good for you because you into getting yourself into trouble to get in that jail, and I ain't into that. I think what I'm into is better. I'm into helping people and being positive. Yeah. Shout out to everybody, man. Okay, I'm gonna get on up out of here, man. Y'all take it light, take it slow. Tell him Uncle Mike told you so. Boy, I'm real like a $2 bill. Peace out.